Welcome to the Baby Playbook podcast. Thank you so much for joining in for another episode. We're really excited to have you tuning in, and I hope that you're learning a lot and you're picking up a lot along the way. We have a really special episode today that takes us into the world of having twins. I think as somebody who hasn't had twins, I've always been really fascinated with this. Everything from, I guess, finding out to the pregnancy, to the birth, and then juggling twins as they come into the world. I mean, as a parent, I know when Noah came into the world, even just as my first baby, I was so overwhelmed with everything that, parenting and motherhood and newborn contained. So I cannot imagine doubling that and then having to handle it. But our guest today has done that very thing. Chantae Reden is joining us now. She has such an amazing job as well, and she's joining us from such a beautiful place in the world. She's joining us from Fiji. She is a travel writer. And she has two beautiful identical twins who are currently entering into the toddler stage at 18 months. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is really exciting. I was very excited when Chantae reached out to me via email, because I think, what we try and do in this podcast is touch on all the different elements of baby and parenting and motherhood that, I guess aren't the obvious things that you talk about. You talk a lot about like sleep tips and milk and breastfeeding and baby. But I guess one of the more unique experiences for a particular group of people is having twins and having to not just, I guess, mentally prepare for that and then physically go through the pregnancy and then also parent in a different way because you have two babies around. First, just give me a recap. How did it all go down? What was it like to find out that you were having twins?
So just as a tiny bit of background, I work as a travel writer and my husband works as an oceanographer. So we're both traveling a lot. And I was in the Caribbean, then I went in Arkansas and just on random trips. And in the middle of that, I found out that I was pregnant. And I wanted to wait to tell my husband in person, but it would be a few weeks. So the whole time I had this pregnancy knowledge, and I thought it was just one baby. And I had to keep that a secret for a few weeks, like dodging plans to do stuff that like pregnant people would not be able to do down the line. Then I told him. We went to, I think, 2 or 3 scans actually, and they only saw a singleton. Then at our, like, I think around the 14 mark, 12 to 14, we learned that there's 2 babies. Well, the sonographer was like, how many, or what did I say last time you were here? And I was like, a baby. And then she's like, now there's 2. And I was like stunned because it doesn't run in our families or anything. And my partner was super excited. He was actually more excited about twins than finding out that I was pregnant. Yeah, it was definitely a huge shock.
How did you guys feel kind of coming out of there? Because obviously, as you said, you've kind of made some like very rough plans, and you've like, I assume as well, like kind of pictured a baby. You started to picture this little like family of yours, but then all of a sudden that kind of doubles. What was your initial, I guess, like concerns or initial just like stress, factors that were coming into mind in terms of like, was it, how are we going to do this because you're traveling a lot? Or was it, do we have enough money for this? Like what kind of things go through your mind?
I think it was such a shakeup because I had been gathering things, like you're kind of nesting for one baby. So I'm borrowing a lot of just like one item or like buying one. And I at first envisioned myself having a very like unmedicated birth in a birthing center, and just that was the route I thought I wanted to go. But when we found out I was having twins, we also found out they were on one placenta, so it was going to be a very medically involved pregnancy. And the doctors said, oh, it will be like probably a mandatory C-section and they're going to come early. So it felt like everything was kind of rerouting. And I think my first concern was, how will my body handle this? Like, I was fearful of pregnancy, and then how do I handle a twin pregnancy? So just like keeping them, well fed, and just being also in a place where there's not very, like, it's not a very developed medical care system. That was a huge fear the whole time. And my doctor here actually thought it'd be better for me to go to Australia to do a lot of my more in-depth scans and in-depth appointments because there was no twin specialist here, let alone for the type of twins I was having. Yeah, kind of the medical thing blanketed everything else at the beginning.
Yeah, wow. It'd be a lot of conversations, a lot of appointments, and as you said, kind of like a lot of changes in what, you would typically, I guess, just like expect of a pregnancy and having a baby. How did the pregnancy itself go? And kind of like talk us through the lead up to giving birth.
So with twins are always high risk. I became a twin expert only by having twins of twin pregnancy. But if you have fraternal twins, which have their own placenta and their own amniotic sac, you can usually give birth until like 37, 38 weeks. And a lot of those women have birth vaginally and no issues. But then once they become on the one placenta and two amniotic sacs, which is what I had, or even a higher risk is if they're in one amniotic sac and they're both on one placenta, they're even higher risk. You are just seeing scans. You're getting like scans all the time because maybe every 4 weeks, or some people even every 2 weeks or every week to make sure that the blood is flowing equally from the placenta to both babies. Because what happens a lot with twins or like twins that share a placenta is one twin can receive more blood and then one can receive too little and they both struggle. So that's just something they're monitoring for. And I didn't know that existed. So I was flying from Fiji to Sydney on all the big scans and then all the smaller scans. My doctor in Sydney was working with the medical professionals in Fiji to interpret scans or interpret results. So it was kind of like a team effort, and thankfully both medical teams were very like receptive to working with one another in a way.
Mm. Yeah.
And at 24 weeks, my doctor said, well, twins have a risk of coming early, so yeah, you want to be somewhere that, I guess, the first week of viability. I think there was a baby that was born earlier and survived, but they could come early as 24 weeks. And where do you want to be when that happens? So I actually flew back to the US and lived alone in my grandma's house for a few months until my delivery at 36 weeks, like a scheduled C-section. And it felt like just driving to the hospital, where my husband joined me a few weeks before, driving to the hospital, and it felt like a baby factory. Like I just went in, had a really smooth C-section, then had all of a sudden these two babies. So yeah, it was a very involved medically pregnancy, but went as well as it can go, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know why I'm surprised because again, I have no idea, but like 36 weeks seems like quite like an achievement to get to as well with twins.
Yeah. So many come early, like especially if they're on one placenta or if they're in the same amniotic sac, then it's a super high risk of early arrival. My doctor told me, based on how I was projecting, it'd be just a 50% chance of reaching the 36 weeks marks. And then when they did, I was really excited because, yeah, it's pure luck in a lot of ways, but it did feel really lucky.
Definitely. Now take us into your world with newborn twins because as you said, it's weird because, as you said, it's a bit weird because you are in a C-section, as you said, it was super cruisy, which is great. But then all of a sudden these two babies are just in the room with you. What did those first few months look like for you and your partner? And of course, you guys have a bit of a unique situation where you were in a different country. So then you obviously would have had to come back. Like what was going on over those first few months?
It was very hectic. I think the first 6 days we were in the hospital and they say like get rest mama, but then every 8 minutes someone is there taking your vitals, baby's vitals, and even the mental health professionals come in and be like, yeah, you need to rest and you need to look after yourself, and you're kind of like, I'm trying, but no one will leave. And then like not like including you, but it yeah, I never knew such a level of exhaustion. And there was one of the baby twins went to the NICU, and then the other was in the general with me. So my husband went one twin into NICU, and then I was in another room with the second baby. And it just felt very stressful, first of all, being separated. But there was one night when a nurse was like, do you want me to just, he was in my baby that I was looking after was in an incubator. And she's like, do you want me to just have him with me in the nurse's station and you could get some rest? And I was like, actually, yes, that would really be helpful for everyone. But I hear a mom say, oh, who would leave their baby in the nurse's station? So I feel like the mom guilt already like started.
It really never ends. Do you know what's really funny that you say that? Because when I had my first baby, I had no idea that was even an option. And then I remember when I had my second, I was similar, like I was in my room with my second baby and he just wasn't sleeping that first night. And the nurse came in and was like, did you want us to, like take the baby? We can like pop them down and give them a good sleep. You can have a sleep. And I was like, what? I had no idea this was a perk, and I completely, I took advantage of that for the next few days. But if I did do it with my first, I feel like mum guilt would have been like through the roof,
The babies, it's normal for the babies to kind of get rest away from the mom. So that was really hectic, and like a level of exhaustion that I had never felt before or even close was those days in the hospital. Then I was really, really scared when we went home with them because it was like, because they were premature, they were having trouble breastfeeding, and then they had trouble with like the bottle feeding, and everything just seemed like it was not going to the fairy tale thing. And when we came home, I was like, no one's told us how to really look after them. Like, they're just going to let us take them home. When are their real parents coming? And at first my husband and I tried to do everything together, like waking up the zillion times a night and feeding them together. And we had to wake them because they were premature to feed every few hours. But eventually, after a few weeks, we sorted into a shift work system where he would sleep from 10 p.m. to 4 with them, and then I would do 4 a.m. to maybe 9 or 10 a.m. with them. So we each got a chunk of sleep. Or I would still have to wake up to pump milk, but at least when you pump milk, it's kind of a more predictable time that you're awake. You just know the pump is going to run for 20 minutes versus babies are going to eat from 10 to 40 minutes. You have no idea, and then it's going to take long to settle them. The shift work really saved us. And I think even with poor singleton sleepers who don't sleep well through the night, it could be a good strategy.
Yeah, definitely. And so there's a little bit of a glimpse on your day to day. So you mentioned, so you did try and kind of like do, okay, well, there's two of them, let's both, be up and about and one each. But then you shifted into a shift work style. How did the day look like?
The day it kind of felt like we just lived 3-hour increments over 24 hours. Like if it was daytime, we were maybe doing stuff outside, but it was a similar feeding and sleeping schedule for the babies. It was like life restarted every 3 hours or 2 hours. And then I think we also tried to simplify our life while that was happening. So for dinner, or like any meals really, it was like, what's kind of easy? Can we get like a back salad, a soup, or like pre-made something just to survive? Because when you look around your house, there's like bibs, bottles, like clothes, diapers everywhere. And then if you like dishes would have just been too, like cooking dishes would be too much. So fortunately we live somewhere we could walk around a lot. So went for walks, and then maybe we would give each other a break. Like one can go to yoga, another one, well, my partner could go surfing. I was not surfing.
Yes, because of course there's the recovery still as well.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned a little bit before, keeping food simple, doing a bit of shift work at night. Do you have any other insights into now when you can look back and go, actually, these are the things that I would, for example, recommend to another twin mom and dad?
When it comes to products, there's this product called the Twin Z, which is like a twin breastfeeding pillow. You can clip it around yourself and then pop one baby on each side. And your partner can also bottle feed them pretty easily in there. And it's just nice to relax with them, that you're not, even if you have an elderly grandparent or something holding them, that they're not like, it's kind of a more pimped out version of a breastfeeding pillow, and it's super comfortable, and they still use it, like read books in it and stuff. And then if you are wanting to wash, or if you're using any bottles, I think the bottle washer sterilizer with the dryer, like it has to have the dryer if you're paranoid about those like water drops and making sure everything's dry, just anything to simplify. And I used everything secondhand from Facebook Marketplace or asking around or buy nothing groups. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, because I think even on this podcast, we always talk about saving money, because you just never understand how expensive a baby can get until you start. Like, especially panic buying. Like, I don't know, you must have gone through this as well. Like, if they're not sleeping, you go and like panic buy, like, I don't know, some sort of sleep product that like markets itself as being like a saving grace. And all of a sudden, like, you've bought a million different products and they're all sitting around. So that's a really great tip. And tell me, in terms of finances and expenses, did it get quite expensive? Because I think that's an assumption that I would have as a non-twin mum. Is everything, I guess, everything you need double of? So is it quite overwhelming, the budget?
Yeah, I think there's a pet peeve among twin moms, and people say like two for the price of one, because it's two for the price of two. Like when you have back to back kids, you get hand me downs, but then with twins, you have to do everything right away. It can, especially if you're doing, like, if you need to purchase formula, you're moving through so much formula, so many diapers. We did a bit of cloth diapering, especially during the newborn time, when you can throw those diapers in just a washing machine, because formula and breast milk poop wash like water soluble. But once they became toddlers, that became a little bit harder, because it's way more intense now to do their diapers with like a solid foods poop. So yeah, and just asking around, like my sister had friends who had twins and they gave us all their clothes, and we've, like, if you put in the effort at the beginning trying to use your network of borrowing, that can really help. Like we had the twin bassinet for I think $50, knew it might have been 400 or 500, and just start as soon as you find out you're having twins, then start looking early, because it can get really expensive. And I know that some twin moms ask their doctors if they have formula samples or any coupons they can get for formula. We had to purchase donor breast milk for the first few weeks, and that was really expensive in the US. But there is also in the US, I'm not exactly sure if it's the same in Australia, but people who donate breast milk, or there's milk banks you can buy from. Maybe your babies might qualify if they're, especially if they're premature. A lot of times health insurance will give it to them like until they reach the 40-week mark of age or something. So it's always worth like looking deep for the deals.
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, like also asking, I think as soon as a friend is pregnant these days, I'm like, this is the list of things I have. and it's funny, because a lot of the time I think and it might be different when you have twins, but I think when you first become pregnant, for some reason we have this weird, like, no, I'm going to buy the pram, I'm going to go through like all of the different brands and find the one that I want. Guess when you have twins, you don't have that luxury. But it's just like a silly kind of thing that we tend to have, where we feel like, okay, first baby, we need to like invest in everything. Whereas a lot of things you're only also using for a short amount of time, things like capsules, which only last 6 months. I guess, a breastfeeding pillow you might not be using for that long, or whatever it may be. So being able to
Yeah,
save money wherever you can.
I feel like it's like this, like I need to get the best for my baby, because if I give them something secondhand, then like it means I don't know, this like this whole story, I don't love them so much, but then I myself, well, the earth's resources are finite, and if I give them secondhand, it's like better off for their environmental future. I don't know, either way, like, yeah, you use it for such a short amount of time. And especially newborn stuff, when you get hand-me-downs, they're usually in great shape because the previous baby only used it for 2 or 3 months as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, and your baby is comfortable either way. We also
Yeah.
only dress them in like the coveralls with the footy pajamas, because it was just too much to keep on top of all the cute outfits, I guess. I had a few, but they were just going in from one zippy to the next.
Yeah, I think that's just with every baby as well, not just twins. And how did you talk to me about how you and your partner kind of came together as a team, and what advice would you have for other parents who are potentially, I don't want to call it a challenge, it is, but potentially facing this challenge or this, journey coming ahead?
Yeah, well, I think it is a challenge because every single thing about your life, your career or your interests are uprooted for both of you. And then I think for moms, you're struggling in like a different way. So we try to talk every day about, like, even if it's just I'm tired, I'm more sensitive, don't make any silly jokes with me because I'm fragile. And then he could also say the same, or your partner, just kind of reconnecting and reminding that if there is emotional fragility, a lot of times it's not personal. And also talking openly about how to divide the load. So I know some of my friends, they have one task they always do and the partner always does another, and that really works for them with like sharing the load. And once it starts to build up, if you feel that you're taking on too much, then to come early with that and try and meet together in a way that, like, how can you diffuse the responsibilities, or how can you even just be, I don't know, like hormonally upset or just legitimately upset, any time of upset, and allowed to feel tired or frustrated or whatever you're feeling, because all those feelings are normal. Like, actually, the newborn phase, I found it so far by far the hardest. Like, there was a night where I was like, did I ruin our life? Like, did we ruin our lives? And now every day we're so excited we have them, but it's just hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard. It's some really great advice there. Can I ask? I have to ask because I feel like so many people would be curious. Do you get slightly annoyed with people, like, for example, if I have one child and I complain about being tired, do you get slightly annoyed at people who do that? Or are you very understanding of, like, whether you have one baby or twins, it's all just really hard?
I feel like it's so baby dependent. Like, one of my best friends has a baby the same exact age, and her baby still wakes up like 3 times a night at 18 months. And so I don't think anyone should get annoyed. Definitely not, because we all are like struggling, or maybe your sleep needs are high and the other person's are low. So I think people do have like annoyed. Uh, Twin parents have common like pet peeves, but I don't. We're all kind of struggling together. Or like, it's the same with eating. Like, if your child, if they're a singleton or multiple, like if they struggle with eating, that's 3 times a day you're dealing with that. That's going to be hard if it's one baby or two or three. So yeah, and it's just so dependent on what your baby is like.
Yeah, very much so. Now, the babies are, well, they're not really babies anymore. They're 18 months. So tell me, you mentioned the newborn phase was probably the trickiest. When did you start to see a bit of a shift? And yeah, how did it kind of transition from that newborn phase? What sort of challenges did you face up until around this point?
I think the logistics with the newborn phase was really hard, because like, taking them out by yourself always felt like a big challenge. Like, in the stroller, they're both screaming. It was really hard to soothe both of them at the same time. And then once they became 8 months, I would say, and start being a little bit more interactive and their personality comes through, it kind of feels not like, oh, all this hard work is worth it. But for me, I felt like during the newborn phase, there was this like, who are you feeling. And I don't know if that's because they were a little bit premature. So in like the little like, creature mode is what it like it'll look like no one is there when you're looking at them. Um, and that mode maybe was a little bit long when they're premature. But yeah, when they're 8 months and start interacting and then they're crawling, then you can actually go out and they're like enjoying being at the park, and you're not just like, I'm at the zoo, even though your focus cannot see any creature further than 10 meters or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they hit 8 months, every month I've been saying like, oh, this is my favorite age. This is my favorite age. So I think
Yeah.
it gets in different ways, but it gets better.
What is your, like, best piece of advice for twin parents, whether it's yeah, people who are about to have twins for the first time, or perhaps, even I feel like what would be even more confronting is if you already have a child and then you are having twins. Yeah, what do you kind of tell people about, because it's really hard. We all know when you join the parenting group, you like never really understand parenting until you're fully in the thick of it. And even when you try and explain it to people, you just can't. Like, there's no way to explain it, and you just go, they're just going to understand when they're in the thick of it. But then it's another element to explain what it's like to have twins. So what do you say to parents who might be a bit nervous approaching that?
I think definitely you kind of survive the newborn phase shift by like shift, and it's going to be a lot. You're doing, by the time it's half the day is done, you've done double the amount of diapers, bottles, everything that you might have with your first child, and especially if you have your first child. Yeah, that you just have to like believe in yourself. You can get through it, and just take it small, like little by little. And even if like the dishes don't get done, the laundry is still a disaster. Like everything is a disaster if everyone is fed. They can't stay awake forever, even though it feels like that. But eventually they will sleep and you will sleep. And it's just, I think it's survival mode in twin newborndom. And try and like acknowledge all the hard work that you're doing and that your network is doing if they're helping you, and that'll get you through. You'll get there, get out. Yeah.
Amazing. It's so interesting to speak to you, Chantae. I think it's, and it's also really nice that you share kind of the realities of this as well, because I think it's really, sometimes we see these beautiful photos on Instagram, as we do of like singletons as well, but like twins in cute matching outfits and like a really happy family. But I think, there is the reality side of things, as there is with, any baby, but that, it can be really hard. And as you're saying, you can be in survival mode for quite some time. So it's really good to talk about it and just be realistic and to share in the pits of the newborn mess and be honest about it.
Yeah. And also that's such a good statement about the reality of parenting on Instagram. I saw a mom who had multiple children. She was feeding them all with one bowl and one spoon and just going like assembly line. All the comments were very critical. But as a twin mom, that's just the way it needs to be done, especially if she had 3 or 4 kids. I don't remember. So yeah, you just figure out your own method and it'll all be good, and don't detract. Like, let the perfection kind of influence you.
Love it. Well, you guys can keep up with Chantae and her beautiful family and also all her writing work as well. The Salt Sirens is on Instagram and thesaltsirens.com. And I'll pop those links, of course, in our bio. Thank you so much for your time today.